This is your movie friend. I'm here with Elise, and we're going to talk about The Hateful Eight. What did you think about the acting? Like, was it good? What did you take from it? Was it bad? Was it unique in some way?
Um, I guess by my standards, I thought it was pretty good acting in that it never felt like acting,
Uh-huh.
really taken out of the story. Um, except for Channing Tatum,
Yeah,
honestly.
yeah. There were,
But I don't know if that's my inherent bias of like looking at him and going, that's Channing Tatum or not. But that didn't have, but I also, there are a lot of prolific actors in this movie that didn't happen for. So,
yeah. And which
um,
I do think I probably felt that a little more, where like I was like, that's Samuel L. Jackson doing his Tarantino role or whatever.
mhm,
Uh, I thought it was the acting. I think I would characterize it was very like eccentric, extreme acting almost. Like everyone was going like 100%. No, there weren't any subtle performances here. I think that's purposeful. They're trying to just get at the heightened sense of reality here. Everyone is very much who they are, and they're
mhm.
just trying to represent who they are through the acting. What their thing is about or whatever. No one's trying to hide things beyond the things that they're trying to hide. No one's trying to hide things about who they are personality wise.
I think that's definitely true. But it's interesting to think about that with the concept of a lot of the characters in this movie are playing a role
Uh
within the
huh.
movie. So it's like actors acting and the acting as someone else. Like
Yeah.
even the British guy is playing like a posher version of a British guy. Is at the end he actually has a Cockney accent,
Uh huh.
like when he's out of his character. Um, which I don't know, I thought was interesting. But then I would definitely say that it's pretty like stereotypical Tarantino acting, like you
Uh-huh.
said, just
Do
kind
you
of all
think?
in.
Do you think about the acting? That's I think an interesting thing that you mentioned related to the acting. That it's interesting that everyone is what I think characterizes this movie is that everyone is lying in many ways. Everyone's pretending to be someone else or putting on a face in some way, even if their idiosyncrasies and personalities come through. Everyone's acting uh, in the movie. Everyone's trying to be someone else or put off a certain vibe for either survival's sake or for whatever reason. I do think that's interesting that everyone's trying to be someone else. What did you think about the story, the plot? Did you enjoy the twists and turns of it? Did you feel like the writing was a little subpar? What did you think about it?
I would say I did enjoy the twists and turns of it. I didn't really like how hand-holdy it was sometimes in an attempt to like kind of build the suspense where it was like
Uh,
someone's not who they seem. Something is happening. That felt, I don't know, a little unnecessary to me.
I did
Um,
Yeah, I definitely did feel like there were many moments, especially towards the beginning, where it was like a lot of stuff that felt very much like an exposition dump, where it was like, I know who you are, you're this thing, and oh, I remember this, you telling me this thing, and that's it. It's just like, could you not have said this in a more like organic way? How could you not have put this in the script to reveal who these characters? Because you have to reveal who all these characters are. I just felt like there could have been a more smoother way to do that in many ways. I don't know.
mhm. And then I don't know, as is with other Tarantino movies too, some of it just kind of felt like an excuse to be as extreme and maybe surprising as possible. Where it's like, I get that this is framed within a certain time, but sometimes it was like, did we really need to do all that?
Yeah.
Um,
That's what I'm just struck
Uh,
by the more Tarantino I see, that going to extremes is like his whole thing. Just like doing the most, like being like extreme language, extreme violence. He's just like very much extremes in that way.
mhm.
So I think
Yeah,
it's in.
especially the story, which I guess I wanted to get your take on this, similar to, I guess, the Anatomy of a Fall, if you whether or not you thought she did it. Do you think that the story that Warren told about the general's son was true,
Uh-huh.
or was he just lying to have an excuse to shoot him?
Yeah. I think because a lot of the movie does get into the tales people tell. Um
Mhm.
And I would say I think that it was probably true to some degree. I think that's that for a lot of this stuff in the movie, even with like the that one guy who's saying like he is the sheriff, the new sheriff of the town. We really never get any sort of conclusive proof of that, or we really never get that confirmed or denied in any way. I think a lot of people are talking. There's some truth to what a lot of people are saying. And I think it's the same case for that with Samuel L. Jackson. I think he probably did see him and kill him. Now, whether he did all that, I feel like maybe that's less so, but I think he did probably interact with him in some way. That's what I
Mhm.
find reasonable. I think everyone's stretching the truth or extending the truth in a way, just like the same thing with the Lincoln letter, uh, in a way that everyone's changing the truth or stretching it uh, to make it fit what best suits them
Mhm.
for survival. I mean, that's what you even see with the people at the beginning. They need to get on the stagecoach so they don't freeze to death. You present truth in a certain way so that way you can survive. In this setting, which is very like cutthroat and the landscape wants you to die. Like this setting wants to kill you, so you have to use your cunning and your words to try to eke out survival, which I think is an interesting thing presented in this movie, which I think is very important, a very important focus to a lot of the motivations in the movie. I don't know if you have any reactions or thoughts on that, but it's just something very interesting that seemed very important to the movie, I thought.
Mhm. I do think the perspective of the landscape wanting to kill you is, I guess, it was an important part of the movie for me because to a certain extent, everyone in the movie is a bad person.
Yeah.
Like, there's not really a real hero. Maybe I feel like you're supposed to be most sympathetic maybe towards Warren.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but at the end of the day, none of them are super great. And then, but I think at its core, like the real monster of the movie, if you're thinking about it that way, is the blizzard.
Mm.
Um, or like the hand of fate or whatever, and it's trapped all of these people who are not great by chance in this one area. But really, without the blizzard, none of it would have happened.
Yeah.
Um, it's kind of the instigator.
That is a really fascinating thing to think about. Is just the importance of fate in this movie. I don't think you necessarily think about that right away. I don't think it necessarily like is really shoving that in your face too much, but I do think it mentions that moments or whatever, just that like it wouldn't have happened if the blizzard hadn't kept everyone there. What did you think about the general like aesthetics and like vibes of the movie? Did anything? I had a couple things that struck me, but I don't know if there was anything that got to you. Like I thought I loved like the font of the title. I
I
liked
did
how
too. Yeah.
I liked the sort of old timey score. It felt very much like an old classic movie. I thought that was very intriguing, very interesting. What did you think of the general aesthetics of the movie, the vibes of the movie?
I thought it was really good. I also very much enjoyed the score. I always pay attention to that. Something else that I noticed is that just the sound design was also really cool. Like how much background noise was integrated into scenes, especially at the beginning, where you could hear OB like driving the horses
Uh,
on in the background of all the conversations. Um, and then the storm in the background as well. Um, which I watched this on like my phone and on my computer.
Uh-huh.
And it still felt like I had surround sound almost because of
Wow.
how the sound was layered, which was really cool. Um, and then something, the colors are really interesting too, especially when they're out in the blizzard. There's one scene, I think, when they're doing the lines
Yeah.
between the outhouse and the stable, where it almost looks like there's spotlights um in the snow. And that was interesting to me just from like the standpoint of, well, obviously there wouldn't be spotlights.
Yeah.
And I think I paused it to try to figure out what was happening and why it looked like that, and I don't think I ever did. Um, Also, most of the scenes, like even though they're all in this confined space, feel really big. Like
Yeah.
there's a lot of on the screen all the time.
Yeah.
Um,
Would
which is interesting as well because despite like being in this very like confined space scenario where everyone's trapped together, everything feels very large and spacious.
yeah.
Um, and then I guess the other big things for me were in the flashback, especially when they're outdoors in the snow. Like the blood on the snow when they find the guy out back.
Yeah.
The contrast there is really cool. Um, and then um, just generally going back to like the snow and everything, and what I feel like, if you really think about it very deeply, is Quentin Tarantino painting a very, or utilizing a very like shallow metaphor with the snow about like manifest destiny. Um, like the great white overtaking of the West.
Uh,
I feel like might be what's happening there, especially if you think about what he's doing with trying to say with race overall, which sometimes I feel like gets a little convoluted with he's at one point he talks about Native Americans and then there's commentary on Mexicans in the Old West and um but
it
yeah.
it it definitely is interesting that like one of the oppressors is the land, but also the land has or the weather has like a race to
Mhm.
it, and it being white snow. It's not like the nighttime is keeping everyone there because they're scared to go outside. It's like the white snow is keeping you locked in, and especially keeping our main character, I would argue, Warren, as a black man confined to this space. But
Mhm.
I do think I agree with you. It's very impressive how they were able to make these spaces, these confined spaces, seem very big and expansive. In addition to like some of the other elements, like it just adds to the aesthetic and the costuming, the props and everything. Just adding it adds to a larger picture of the font of the title or the music score to create this old classic snow western almost. And to quickly dive into Oscars, because I wanted to see what this if this got nominated for anything. It got nominated for the acting. If we go back to the acting, um, Jennifer Jason Leigh as Daisy Domergue got a supporting actress nom, and then it in the technical side of things, it was nominated for best score and best cinematography, and it won best score. And I was like, okay, I'm kind of down with
Hmm.
that.
I think it's a really good score, but it also kind of blends very seamlessly with everything happening
Yeah.
that I feel like I didn't notice it as much once we were into the action as opposed to the slower beginning.
I originally picked this movie because it's a snow movie. That's how I presented it to you. I wanted to watch a snow movie. We had a couple different options, but we landed on this one. We both are from the South, but we've recently moved up to places that are north. Maybe you've experienced some heavy weather now, some snow, some things in a much more intense way, kind of like in this movie. What did you think about it as a snow movie? What did you think about your experiences of snow recently? How does that connect? And do you have any interesting? reactions to that?
Um, yes, I've not been in many bad snowstorms. I drove up to Michigan last year through a blizzard one time. And a 4 hour drive took me 8 hours, and it was kind of scary. Um, we had pretty bad snow here. Had my first real school canceled snow day. Um, and I would say that was fairly unobtrusive, apart from not being able to park anywhere once school started again, because I street park and I had no more spots because they plowed all the snow into where I park. Um, but most recently, I went this last weekend up to a ski resort, and it was very cold, it snowed, and I went hiking um in 30-degree weather where there was ice and snow everywhere, and I didn't have spikes. So we were kind of slipping and sliding, keeping ourselves stable with sticks. And it was so cold that all my hair froze. Um, and I didn't have gloves. I had socks on my hands. Um, so I would say after doing that, I feel like I understood a little bit more what it's like to be out in the cold and the snow like that. Because it did even then just feel very atmospheric, in a way that I feel like is represented pretty well in the movie. Um, Except I would argue post seeing the movie that it may not be as much of a snow movie as it seems, because you do feel so confined to Minnie's haberdashery once you get there.
Yeah,
Um, we rarely see the snow, and it's honestly, once the kind of intrigue happens, interpersonal drama, you don't hear as much about it either. So it's kind of easy to forget that it's even happening at times. Um, because despite the snow being the impetus for everything, it kind of, once it serves its purpose, is no longer a central part of the story. Um, and we really don't see it much even after they lay those lines out.
yeah.
Um,
It,
which
even though there are moments where like the door opens or whatever, and they're like, close the door. I do think it beyond the inciting incident, like you said, for the story to take place, acting as that, it really does take a back seat. Um, and I do think having been in the cold, been in the snow or whatever, maybe not super intense blizzard, it's a hard thing to try to capture. Like any sort of particular feeling, uh like a body feeling like cold or heat or like taste is really hard to put on screen. And I thought it made the snow seem very oppressive, or the shots were very beautiful, or capture things, whatever. But just like feeling the cold itself, I was like, I don't know. You hear the people sort of say like, "Gosh, it's so cold out there," but like, of course, with a lot more expletives. But uh, I was like, I don't know. I didn't really uh, buy that it was like so awful or whatever. Apart from just sort of seeing people react to it in some ways.
I guess I would maybe agree with that too. I The most I really thought about it in terms of it being that cold is I think there's a scene where once he's inside, the snow is evaporating off of Warren's hat, and you can see like the steam. Um, and that was maybe one of the only points where I was like, I believe that it's cold out there.
Uh,
Apart from them just going, because they really do just go, really is cold.
yeah.
And
That's where someone was like, I was like, can we write better dialogue than this? Like, I don't know. We can get a little more creative. What did you think about it just as a Tarantino movie? Because I was surprised. I think this is really only the third Tarantino movie I've seen. And I'm still feel
mm,
like I'm just trying to get an idea of do I like Tarantino or not? Like, what did you think about it as a Tarantino movie in his discography in general? I mean, I'm just struck by the more I see it or whatever. It's just like it seems. maybe not any more or any less than his other movies, but it was such like a mean movie. Like it was such like a, and obviously it's the Hateful Eight, but it was so harsh. It was just like, especially towards the end, it's just like they just love violence. They just love revenge. They just love doing things excessively. And it's like, oh my gosh, it's just like these are icky, nasty people. But also Tarantino is choosing to have all these people do these things, to present people who do these things. It's just like, oh my gosh, it's such a mean movie.
Tarantino does love an icky, nasty man, I will say. Um, I don't know what that says about him. Um, I will say no feet in this movie. I don't think I saw feet.
Points for no feet.
Um, points for no feet. Rare for Tarantino. Um, I have seen, I feel like, a good number of Tarantino movies. Not all of them, but I recently watched a pretty niche one. I don't remember actually the title of it, but it's set in a hotel on New Year's Eve, and they're little vignettes
Mhm.
of different things happening. And I've seen Kill Bill 1 and 2, and a couple others. I think my first Tarantino was Upon a Time in Hollywood in theaters. Um, and I would say out of the Tarantino movies, Django Unchained is probably my favorite, but like similar vibe. Maybe a little less just um intense in a couple ways.
Because it's not just like
Um,
they're bad people. It's like it revels in their awfulness. Like it revels in their violence and kind of like affirms it in some ways. That it's like yeah, maybe these aren't good people, but I think it's fine. It's understandable that they're doing what they're doing. I think it excuses a lot
yeah,
of the intense violence where they're like blowing people's heads off or hanging people or whatever.
I feel like Tarantino pretty blatantly has some sort of fascination with Westerns and the Old West and the kind of gory vigilante justice that comes with that. And I don't know. It's something that I would put in the category of like a very common feature of man movies or a category of movies that I like to call college boy dorm poster movies. Um, where there is a lot of just unnecessary violence and gore and like expletives just for the sake of it, where it's like it's almost like an extreme representation of masculinity to a certain extent. Um, and while a lot of it does feel like it's done for shock value, um, and maybe to distract from like other gaps in dialogue, like maybe they won't notice that the dialogue isn't super strong if we just say a bunch of slurs on top of each other so they go, "Oh my gosh."
Yeah.
Um, but in terms of Tarantino movies, I would put it higher on the list just
Mm.
for him. Um,
Yeah, it does seem like the type of thing just based on other stuff. In some ways I think it's a lot simpler than other movies he's made or whatever because it is really just like one location. I think that's interesting how he really has to focus in on that. So I think in some ways it causes him to be creative and to make interesting creative choices. But in some ways I think it shows sort of the limitations or the shortcomings of his style. I think in some ways it's just like you see these he really just like yeah you see just very clearly how much he enjoys all this violence and awfulness. Because I don't think it's just a presentation or a judgment. I think he enjoys this to a certain degree. Uh,
Mhm.
I think you just kind of see that it's like okay, like you see him for who he is. I think in this movie, and I think it's hard to say that like no, there's a point to all of it. It's like I don't know. This seems a little just excessive because you like it. You like to do this type of thing.
Yeah, I think I really maybe noticed that in the poisoning scene.
Yeah, oh
Um,
yeah, yeah.
why would they be vomiting blood like that? Like I kind of like maybe that would happen, but for it to be poisoned and vomit blood that quickly, like obviously I don't know what it was, but that's a very specific choice, I feel like. That much blood, especially onto Daisy's face and everything.
Yeah,
Where it's like most poison, I feel like doesn't really happen like that.
yeah. Maybe just foam at the mouth and then fall over or something. But
Yeah.
it's a choice to be like, no, I want this to be like the most like I want this to be gross. I want this to be excessive. It's like, yeah, you want it to be that way, for whatever reason, whether it's because you like it or whether because it distracts from maybe some of the other shortcomings of the skill of making this movie. But I think it's interesting. It's interesting
Another
to
one
note.
too is when they kill that one guy and then he's essentially dead and they go back and with two guns shoot him in the head
Yeah,
so that his head explodes. Not necessary.
yeah, just extra. Thinking about this movie, thinking about everything we talked about, would you recommend it to your movie friend?
Yes, because I did that this morning. I was asked for movie recommendations this morning and I listed this, Hateful Eight. After Hours was one of the other ones. Dog Day Afternoon, and then two of my personal favorites. To sit, drive my car and Anatomy of a Fall. So
I'm definitely due for a rewatch of Drive My Car. That's been on my list to rewatch. But yeah, if I think about would I recommend this to my movie friend, I think I would have to ask, do they like Tarantino movies? And if they said yes, then I would. But if it's, I would need to know. I was like, because if you don't like the excessive violence, that stuff turns you off. I'm like, no, no. I think that stuff would turn you off, so you couldn't appreciate, and you couldn't find any sort of appreciation for the more artistic elements of this of the piece. Um, so yeah.